me this page separately, but if you don't need it, I'll just fold it. Yep. And use the front. Oh my God. No need for it. I apologize. I know you got it today, and I just told him I would stay through the reading and then leave, so it's gonna work out fine. My intention was to be here closer to 10:30. I know how that goes. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. I'm right there. Sending a message. I don't know. I don't remember seeing no, and the lighting was really low. Alex?
Yeah.
From Zoom this morning, it looked like we were in a movie theater. It seemed very dark. But you
That's
have
because
to
there's two
take,
bulbs out.
you have to take,
Okay.
yeah, plus you have to take the lights down for when the screen is on.
I was just gonna say,
No, I just want to open the door.
It's also because I didn't have control over the cameras, so that probably has something to do with it.
I was trying to
Yeah.
exciting. Thank you, Beth, for beginning our service in its appropriate way. So good morning. That was a rather exciting clip just a little while ago. If you didn't have a cup of coffee, we're awake now, right? So good morning and welcome to the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, where we covenant to weave together the fabric of community from the strands of our separate lives. We are a dynamic, vibrant, inclusive, welcoming congregation. We're justice-oriented as well. And whoever you are, wherever you are in life's journey, you are welcome here. My name is Marjorie Wormser. I'm your Sunday associate for this particular service. And this would be a great time to silence any noise-making devices, if you have them. And if you are new to our fellowship, hopefully you will have visited the welcome table out front, and in the seat before you is a visitor card that you can take with you. It's a little bit about us, including our 7 principles. So I have a brief number of announcements to share. First, the giving tree is set up in the Great Hall. Please take a tag and return a gift by December 9th. This will benefit the Morris County Correctional Facility Chaplaincy Program. On December 3rd, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., there will be a discussion on the Children and Youth Faith Formation Program. Some of you might know that program as religious education, but it's faith formation now. And then on December 4th, so December 3rd is a Saturday. December 4th, next Sunday, at 11 a.m., there will be an information meeting about the Our Whole Lives, the OWL program, for grades 10 to 12. The second annual Gifts and Giving Fair will be held on Sunday, December 4th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Come shop for gifts while learning about the social justice work of our partners. Finally, the Odyssey Project will feature Allison Chase next Sunday, December 4th at 12:45 p.m. So before we continue with the service, I just invite you to join me to affirm it is good to be. It is good to be here. It is good to be here together. Thank you.
There's this story I've always liked in the Torah, the Jewish scriptures. It's a story when Moses is still a bit on his journey, and he comes on a mountain and encounters a burning bush. But the bush isn't burning up, it's just, there's this fire on it. And turns out that God is in the bush and wants to have a conversation with Moses. And I've always liked that story, especially because one of the things God says to Moses is, take off your shoes. I read recently a rabbi, Lawrence Kushner. He's a contemporary Reform rabbi, and he's a scholar of Jewish mysticism. And he said, we've long misread this story about Moses and the burning bush. He writes, the burning bush was not a miracle where the bush is on fire but not burning up. The burning bush was a test. God wanted to find out if Moses would pay attention to something for more than a minute or two. There's another world, he writes, hidden right here within this one, whenever we pay attention. invite you to join me in the covenant of this fellowship. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. I hope that you all were with folks that you loved and who cared for you on Thanksgiving. I had a lovely time with family, and I ate a lot, ate too much. I made my grandmother's cranberry relish, and so I got part of the tradition. And I made mincemeat pie too. The family I was with didn't even know what mincemeat pie is, and if you don't know what it is, they would tell you it's very weird. It's wonderful. I love mincemeat pie, but and it's so good to have you here, and I hope in a glow of gratitude and appreciation for what we have and the spiritual practice of coming together with one another. And it seemed like what better time than to sing Spirit of Life together. So I invite you to sing with me. If you want to use the book, it's number 123, Spirit of Life. I invite you to stand in spirit or in body. This is a symbol, and I was talking with some folks after our 9:30 service this morning about the chalice. It's a distinctly Unitarian Universalist symbol, especially when it has the rings around it, the rings representing the merger of Unitarians and Universalists in 1961. But the chalice and the flame actually is a centuries-old symbol. Comes from Bohemia, an earlier time, almost 400 years old. The thing about the lighting of the chalice, it is very similar in a way to the meaning we're creating during these milestones and passages, this moment in worship when we celebrate. It has a flame. It's come to mean many things, that flame. It began as representing sacrifice, but it's come to also represent a beacon of hope, of casting the light of meaning and understanding, or the fire of community and commitment. It's got many meanings over the centuries. And like these passages, when we come together in community, this light representing our gathering, the love we hope to share with one another, the attention we give to one another's lives. This moment of milestones and passages is also a ritual of attention, paying attention to one another. How is your friend? How's that newcomer doing you've never met before? Maybe they're not even a newcomer. We come here, all of us, having experienced milestones and passages. There are times we come and we share them with our community in silence, without words. Sometimes we share them also with words. Kathy Cacavelli shared a milestone. My apartment is actually in Madison. Kathy also lives in Madison, and Madison won the Sustainable New Jersey Champion Award for the third time since she's been chair of their committee, the Madison's committee in 2019. Way to go, Kathy. And thanks, she writes, to our town administration for being so forward-looking, our volunteers for being so dedicated. They, like this congregation, committed to the well-being of youth and children and the world in which they are growing up and the world they're going to inherit from us. This chalice is also lit today. Yet another shooting in a Walmart this past week. So often now that, should we grieve? Yes. Is it hard? Yes. Are we feeling numb? Perhaps we are traumatized. It becomes even more important for us to light this chalice, to show the light of our own love and the collected love of this community in times like this. Important for each of us to know that we are seen and will see one another, and to share that practice with the larger world. Perhaps we will have a day when everyone knows that they are seen, that they are loved, that they can be worthy of love, are in some essential way worthy of love. Let that light shine brightly from this community in these difficult times. The world needs you. The world needs this fellowship. On a day when I'm thinking about the practice of attention, of what it means to see the world and people in it and other lives in it, other beings, and to be seen, I chose this hymn called Hush. And it's actually best, I found after the service this morning, just to look at the screen above. And there's some funny notes in there, but you know, the thing about music that comes especially from the gospel tradition, the spiritual tradition, our African-American ancestors in this country have given us this song. Really, you can't sing it wrong. So I invite you to sing it out, sing out loud, and if the note doesn't sound right, it probably is. So I invite you to stand in body or in spirit as we sing Hush.
Somebody's calling my name.
Let me express my gratitude to our African American and spiritual ancestors who gave us the wisdom in that hymn this morning.
This morning's reading comes from Mary Oliver, entitled The Summer Day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. She snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last, and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And now is the time in our service where we give and receive our weekly offering. We believe that generosity changes lives. It changes the lives of people in our community, and it changes our own lives in the giving. Every week, 50% of the offering goes to support the good work here at this fellowship, and 50% goes to support the work of nonprofit organizations in our community. I believe this week's offering is being shared 50-50 with Housing Solutions, is that right? Homeless. Thank you, Beth. Homeless Solutions, got to get it right, okay? So we invite you to be generous as you can and enjoy the music that Beth will be presenting. And thank you for your generosity.
days ago, I had gathered with other area ministers and some parents. We were gathered around a bus in the parking lot of the First Universalist Church of Denver, Colorado. The Front Range congregations, we called them, all the Unitarian Universalist congregations, had a joint effort where our youth would get together and they would do a pilgrimage. And it was a big enough program that we even, all the congregations had a bus. It was good that the ministers were there because we were blessing not just the experience for the youth, we were also blessing the bus because that engine had a way of breaking down on a lot of the trips. We were hoping to get it off without having it need to go into the shop en route. I read that poem that Marjorie Wormser read as part of the reading this morning. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made this grasshopper? Jaws are going back and forth instead of up and down. Suddenly she floats away. I do know how to pay attention, to lie down in the grass, kneel down in the grass, to be idle and blessed. What else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And I read that to the youth, and they were looking at me like, what? That's a heck of a question. But perhaps a question always to be asking. It caught my attention recently. I was reading The Atlantic, and a professor of psychology, Jean Twenge, wrote about 2 months ago about youth today and young adults. More comfortable in their bedrooms than in a car or at a party. Today's teens are physically safer than teens have ever been. Psychologically, on the other hand, they're more vulnerable. Rates of depression and suicide have skyrocketed since 2011. It's not an exaggeration, writes Professor Twenge. Not an exaggeration to describe iGeneration as being on the brink of the worst mental health crisis in decades. And much of this deterioration can be traced to their phones. Always on these dang phones. And as I preach, please, if I seem to start sounding holier than thou, I woke up this morning and the first thing I picked up, and I love to read, like New York Times, Washington Post. I can fall right into this right away and spend a lot of time on it. And that's actually in some ways the point of these screens, is to get our attention into them. Our attention is a valuable commodity. Google, Amazon, they make Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they make a huge amount of money off of us and our attention. Our attention is of great value to them. Is it of great value to us? They shape how we are thinking, how we are feeling, how we are engaged or not engaged with one another. You know, I notice, for example, how easy it is. I'll be scrolling through something in the news, and if I'm, say, on a not so great, a lesser quality news website, say instead of the New York Times or the Washington Post, I'm maybe like on The Sun. It's an English paper, kind of raggy paper, and there's always clickbait on that. And you know, clickbait is one of those things where I go, really, that's a thing? Oh, I'm not sure about that. And I click through it, exactly what they want. Just the first thing I see is an ad, one sentence about what's going on, then another click to see another ad, and then another click to see another. Just clickbait. It's just getting you to click through until you give it. They don't actually expect you to read the article. they're glad if they get you 3, 4 clicks. I've noticed that the ads by the end of 10 or 20 clicks actually don't amount to much. Our attention is valuable. We come here to have others see us. And I think, at least subconsciously, we come to learn to see the world and to see others. All the religions of the world, in my experience, have a kind of practice that is about paying attention. In Buddhism, for example, there's a story of a student who is on the road looking for truth and meets the Buddha, and recognizing something special about the Buddha says, "Oh, my friend, who are you? Are you a celestial being? Are you a god?" The Buddha says, "No." "Well then, are you some kind of magician or a wizard?" Again, the Buddha answers, "No." "Are you a man?" "No." "Are you a woman?" "No." You can tell I'm adding this part. "Are you non-binary or something?" "No." "Well," says the student, "my friend, what are you?" The Buddha replies, "I am awake." This universal concept of attentiveness, of being awake, of seeing, in Buddhism, it can be called mindfulness. In Christianity, we're just beginning the Advent season, a time from this morning leading up until Christmas, when there's the practice in the Christian tradition of being attentive, of actually even being awake. In fact, in the Gospel of Mark, it says, "What I say to you, I say to all, stay awake." In fact, I am the interim minister of the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. And what's interesting is that I'm a minister, and I know sometimes folks will say, "Well, wait a minute, Unitarian Universalism is not just limited to one kind of faith. We have more beliefs than we have people in this room at the moment." I know we have, because I'm still struggling between a couple things myself. But, ministry didn't originate in Christian theology. It originated in an ancient Latin meaning. To minister is to attend to pay attention to something, to attend to a public trust. Thus the minister of a government and a nation. To minister is to be attentive. All of us have a ministry. How shall we attend to it? And to attend, to minister, we know requires some kind of ability to see with an open heart, to apprehend with an open mind. I first began thinking about the spiritual practice of attention years ago when I read this story by Richard Sandor. He was a physician in California, and he wrote about what a privilege it was to attend to the ill. He writes, "I'd always felt it was a privilege, but I didn't begin to understand what that meant until the death of a dear friend. After a diagnosis of inoperable cancer, she asked, 'Can you help me die at home?' I'd never seen anyone die naturally before. It seemed to me that if there's anything unique about being an attending physician, it's the force with one's daily work demands on the direction one must have of a genuine inner development." I had to have a sense of myself. Perhaps that was the first function of an active attention. So then he describes what happened. One night many years ago, during duty in an emergency room, I was awakened by a call to see yet another patient. I made my way to the emergency room to see a mother and her 8-year-old son. Before I could say a word, the mother informed me, "This boy needs a shot of penicillin right now." In a flash, I took in the whole scene, reading in their faces and postures like we were all in a play. The woman was tired and angry. Her son was complaining of a sore throat. She was suspicious he was faking it. She'd threatened him with getting a shot. I saw all this in a flash, and I began questioning. This was my role, and my role was not restricted to treating illness. I ordered tests, and while waiting for results, asked his mother how she was, and from a real interest in knowing. Tearfully, she described the difficulties of raising her son alone and keeping a full-time job. As we talked, she edged closer to her son and began rubbing his back. This scene has remained alive in my memory for years, because on that occasion, I truly attended. It's the very stuff of life to be seen and to see one another. In our first years of life, we require the presence of people who can see us, who can attend to us, care for our bodies, make sure that we're fed, but yes, also see us, respond when we smile, speak to us so that we can learn to speak. I had the great privilege in my younger years, when my children were born, I got to be the at-home parent. The mother of my children was not really interested in being home with infants and was very pleased that I was delighted to do that. And I remember at the time I had just finished theological school. I was very interested in Buddhism. And as I was studying Buddhism, I remember holding my little baby boy in my arms. And I was reading about Buddhism and attachment, and Buddhism was saying, or at least I thought it was saying, don't be attached. And at the time I decided I couldn't be a Buddhist because I said, I need to attach to this baby because the baby needs to attach to me, or that baby's not going to have a very good life. Plus the fact I just loved him with all my heart, still do. Alan Wells was here in the first service, and he said, "No, actually, Joel, you almost got that right, not quite. It's better translated as clinging." And yeah, I didn't need to cling to my kid. Given his temperament, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't put up with it anyway. We need to be seen. We need to see and to be seen, and we know that about infants. They don't thrive unless they are known and loved. In fact, Bruno Bettelheim was a writer who wrote about surviving Nazi concentration camps. He wrote about the importance of attention for the people who were imprisoned in this camp. To want to go on living in even so terrible a situation, to keep one's respect for oneself, and with it, respect for others, just to maintain hope. We had to hold on to the belief that we were not abandoned. Any scrap of evidence was sufficient if it suggested that somebody cared about us. It was so vitally important for survival to believe we had not been forsaken. But attention is not an easy skill, and it's easy for others, especially these days, as I was mentioning earlier, just to grab a hold of our attention, use it like a commodity, like it's iron ore you dig up out of the earth, or sunlight we're going to take energy from it in a solar panel. It's just a thing. It's not a thing. Our attention interacts in unexpected ways with our lives and with one another. So I was really astounded some years ago now. I was reading about quantum physics. I'd never really studied it in college, but I was reading some spiritual journal, and they mentioned quantum physics, and I was a little skeptical, like, where are we going with this? But one of the discoveries included the effect of what happens when we observe subatomic particles. So there's an example is there's a subatomic particle called a kaon. I don't know exactly what it is. Actually, I had thought it was smaller than an electron, but Joe Erhane, who is a quantum physicist, I guess, explained actually the kaons are bigger than electrons, so I'm learning. But what they do is that before we see the kaons, they are said to spin. One spins in one direction, and the other spins in the opposite direction. Except that before anybody sees them, they're not spinning. They have their pre-spin, or the spin is indeterminate. I don't really know why that is, but it's like they don't spin until somebody looks at them. And then when they spin, one spins in one direction, and the other one always spins in the opposite direction. But what spin they're going to get, you can't predict until you look at it. And the amazing thing about that is you can observe a kaon, say here, well, if you had a particle accelerator, big giant machine, and you were to observe it here in Morristown, and the other kaon that was connected to it were, say, in Arcturus, a stellar system light years away from here, they would get their spins instantly at the same time. That's just amazing to me. Faster than the speed of light, even. It's amazing that it happens that fast. It's amazing that we look at it and this physical change happens. And the information's transmitted across space, outside of time. I don't know. It's quantum physics. Anybody who says they understand it, except maybe Joe Erhane, I'm not going to pretend to understand it, but it's amazing evidence that even in physics, to see and to be seen changes reality itself. We are changed by seeing and being seen. I'd love it if there were some way we could take that and make that, there's like the transporter machine in Star Trek. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but I don't know if that, apparently that's not really a thing, but. Yet it's so easy not to pay attention, not to see the grasshoppers that live in this beautiful lawn in the summertime here around the fellowship, not to pay attention to our amazing children and our youth. And I think about our youth who are spending all of their time, maybe I'm overstating it, but to spend so much time on the smartphones, specifically on the phones, not even a laptop, but a phone. There are two great inhibitors to this spiritual practice of attention. One of them is this commodification of our attention, taking it from us without our even realizing it's being taken from us. But there's another inhibitor also. And that inhibitor of the practice of attention is fear. One of the great things about the gifts, another gift of Buddhism and of Hinduism in my experience is that they talk about fear, how fear steals our attention from us. Literally, we find ourselves afraid, we stop breathing. It's part of a process of self-protection. We evolved to do that, but the problem with that is as soon as you stop breathing, you stop sending adequate oxygen to your brain, and it's really hard to pay attention. And so the practice of breathing, of meditating and breathing in Buddhism and in Hinduism in part, is to keep us awake, paying attention. And these religious traditions, these spiritual traditions, and Christianity and Judaism tell us to look at our fear, to remember to breathe, and see what it is about our fear. Because fear prevents attention. Even if we're remembering to breathe, it turns our eyes away from what we love. It stops up our ears. We can't listen. Our hearts close. Our minds stop thinking. One Buddhist Zen Roshi practitioner writes, "Any event fully attended uproots all our knowing, right at its source, carries inexhaustible surprises. Even fear is worthy of our attention. Let it not steal our attention." And so when I think about our young adults or our youth, how comfortable it is to be in their bedrooms, how comfortable it is to be just going through the clickbait or the scrolling, TikTok, and how they'll tell us it's frightening to come into a shared space like this, to be together in person, to date. Fear can't be controlled. The moment we think we can control it, our brains are again being starved of oxygen, and what we're seeing is not real. What we're attending to is not real. Fear loses its power over us when we simply see it for what it is, the emotion of it. So to overcome that fear, to see it, and then attend to that second obstacle. What shall we do with our attention? To what shall we give it? Some years ago, after I had read this story by Richard Sandor, a member of the congregation I was serving came up, also a physician, and he told me how grateful he was that when he had begun in medicine, he had time to attend, to sit with families and with patients and talk with them, and how the pressures, insurance pressures and pressures from government to get as much done. You had a certain amount of time with each patient, and you couldn't take any more time than that, or the insurance company would have to do audits, or the government would tell you were stealing. He said, I don't think I could have become a physician if I had started in these times. It's not that medical professionals or other professionals are responsible for the lack of attentiveness. Attention takes time, and it has value in the society, and it's so hard to give it. The system requires us not to. It makes me question, perhaps, our current economic system that claims to be free. Maybe it's not as free as it claims. I think our lives have to be measured by more than value and efficiency, or at least the value is determined by somebody else. Is it a luxury to have eyes that can truly take time to see the world around us, to hold a grasshopper on a summer day? Is it a luxury to hold our children and see them, tell them their names, enjoy them discovering the world, keeping them safe and fed? Is it a luxury to nurture our own open hearts and our own thoughtful minds? I don't know of a single religion that calls attention a luxury belonging to somebody else. And even if we get our own attention back, somehow find a way not to let these devices take our attention from us thoughtlessly. It's hard to pay attention. It's hard to look into one's own life and not be overwhelmed by past and future. But that's the reason that I wanted to talk about these crazy little kaons. I think there's a lesson in those subatomic particles too, because Attention requires an indeterminacy of thinking and feeling. The spin of these little kaons is indeterminate. And to truly minister means coming to a moment with another without a preconception of what is supposed to be happening or what has happened. First we see, and then we come to understanding. And in seeing the world, find ourselves changed by what we have seen, and what we have seen has been changed by our seeing. The experience of being in the attention of compassionate people is powerful enough to change a life, to save a life. To receive attention can encourage a person in the grips of pain to hang on in spite of that pain. Even tyrants, Amnesty International, will publicize the imprisonment and unfair treatment of someone. And even tyrants, when they start receiving tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of letters and names, tyrants will see that attention falling upon them and feel they must give that prisoner mercy. Paying attention, even paying attention to others, is a way of even attending to our own lives. The spiritual practice is to see what we love, to understand what is sacred, to remember what is cherished, to know what is beautiful. And even though it will all someday be lost, that everything someday will die, and our fears threaten to overwhelm us, to keep our hearts open and our eyes and ears seeing and listening. Attention is a skill that will require everything in our lives. But there's a profound joy that comes by practicing attention. It is the joy of a summer's day given to seeing the amazing life in a field in our hand in the form of a grasshopper. It is the joy of children being alive, being held, fed, and knowing the sense of community. It's the quiet joy of elders who've collected much wisdom through a whole lifetime of experience, and other lifetimes because they have watched and listened. To pay attention is the joy of discovering the strange laws of particles too small to ever see. To pay attention is to carry a flame with us. It reminds us of how beautiful this life is, how wonderful this world is, and to share the flame with others, that they can know it too, and know how good it is to be together. I invite you to sing with me as we go take that light back out into the world. This hymn is number 112, Do You Hear? And I invite you to stand in body or spirit.
Do you hear
worship, our time of paying attention to here in this place has come to an end, but the time of carrying this light and attending to its life-saving love continues through the week. Take this light with you, and through the week, may it serve you and remind you that you are beloved. Share it with others so that they too can build a beloved world of peace. Go in peace, be in peace. See you next Sunday.